Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. On this episode, we have Dina, and she had some Bigfoot encounters to share with all of us from the Catskill Mountains in New York. I've actually heard a lot of Bigfoot sighting reports from this area, and it seems to be a hot spot in the United States, and they're all over the place, guys. So beware if you go out in the forest, know that these things exist, and you could possibly run into one. Have you ever had a Bigfoot encounter? Would you like to share it with me here on the channel? Please contact me sometime at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. If you guys enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And you can support the channel by purchasing some merchandise. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive into Dina's Bigfoot encounters from the state of New York. All right, Dina, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Miguel. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I would like to talk to you about your encounters today. Dina, if you would tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your experiences from the very beginning.
Sure. Well, my name is Dina. I'm 48 years old. I'm from New York City. But my family has had property my whole life up in the Catskills in actually Gilboa, New York. And the first experience I ever had, it was quite odd. See, our cabin, it's mainly used for hunting, so there isn't any running water or electricity. But, we have the generator, and right outside the cabin, there is a stream that it comes out of the rock wall behind the cabin, and it runs right across the property. And years ago, we used to have a big blue drum, and it would fill up with water, and then the water would just keep flowing out and, continue on down in the stream. And that's the water we would use, to brush our teeth, to cook, or, it was the best, clearest water you'll ever have in your life. So one night, after we had just arrived a few hours earlier, I was outside at the drum, and it was dark, and I was brushing my teeth, and I was with my mom. And at the end of the driveway, I can clearly see two sets of red eyes. Clear as day. There was no mistaking it. And the odd thing about the red eyes was the form around it. It seemed darker than the night. And it was just so odd. But the weird thing is that at that same time, the house that we were living in, I was having paranormal experiences. Every night when I would go to bed, I could feel there was somebody or something standing in my doorway. I could feel it. I could feel the eyes on me. And the odd thing was, when I first saw the red eyes, I got scared thinking, oh my God, whatever that is at home followed us here. But then it didn't look right because I never saw anything at home. It was just a feeling. And I never felt more than one. And here I'm looking at two sets of red eyes at the end of the driveway. My mom, she just brushed it off. Oh, it's probably coyote or whatever. And I'm trying to explain to her, Mom, there aren't any animals out here that have red eyes. There's no animal out here that has red eyes. I might be a city kid, but I've spent enough time in the country to know that there aren't any animals with red eyes shine at night. So we go back inside, and throughout the night, I could feel like somebody was outside the bedroom window. I just felt like we were being watched. But I let it go. My mother, she didn't want to hear anything about it. She brushed me off, so I said, okay, I'll let it go. So the next day, as many times as other times I've done this, I've gone out, I ventured into the woods, and had a great time. I never felt in fear. I never felt I was in danger. But this day was different. I couldn't help and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Not just watched, but followed. The hair was standing on the back of my neck, and I just had this inner instinct to tell me, get back to the cabin and get back there now. And it got to a point where, and I know you're not supposed to run when you feel like you're being chased, but I feel like the last 50 feet to the cabin, I couldn't help. Like, I had to run. It was like my life was depending on me getting to this cabin. It was the most overwhelming feeling I have ever had in my life. It shook me. It was a feeling I'd never felt before. So I get to the cabin and I tell my stepfather what I just experienced. And he says, well, it could have been an animal out there, and, maybe somebody was just, trespassing through our property and cutting through, and maybe that's what you felt. So he brushed it off. Now, there was another time we were there, and behind the cabin, there was a field. It was down a drop, and it was this huge open field surrounded by the woodlot. It was just circled around by trees. But it was an open field, and that's where we would go down and we would shoot the BB, we would target practice. That's where, we would go down there. And there was one day I was standing in the kitchen getting ready to go outside, and I can clearly see two figures walking across the field. But what struck me funny is that they were so large. That was the first thing that struck out to me, because I can recall seeing my stepdad, my brothers, my cousins, everybody in the field. They looked so tiny compared to these two figures walking, just sashaying across the field like nothing, just walking as if there wasn't anybody else around. There wasn't a cabin above them, nothing, just walking. And I said to my stepdad's sister, I pointed them out to her, and she thought that they were two guys in ghillie suits, but she said the same thing I did. Those are some big guys. Like, wow. Like, I've never seen anybody look that big from up here. So she went and got the shotgun. She came back, but they were gone, just gone. She told my stepfather about it when he came back, and he just said, oh, maybe it was two guys. Just again, they just brushed it off. So, whatever. They let that go. Now, in all these years, I've been at this cabin my whole life. I've been going there since I'm 8 years old, and I'm 48 now. My brothers inherited the cabin, so this cabin is still in our family. The only thing that has changed about this cabin is that we no longer have a blue drum. We now have a hose that, is connected to a faucet, and they have a nice little platform, and that's the only thing that's been upgraded about this cabin. Now, in explaining to my brother the experiences I've had over the years, I've been there many times, felt like I'm being watched when we're out in the woods. And, our whole family, we hunt, turkey hunt, deer hunt, we do it all. And we're there throughout the entire year. We go there all 4 seasons. We are there throughout the entire year. And throughout the entire year, I've never seen one with my own eyes, but I have had, I guess the two walking across the field, my stepfather's sister thinks that they were two guys in ghillie suits, but I don't buy that. They were so large. And my brothers have ghillie suits. And when I look at them in their ghillie suits to this day, I still think back to that experience, and their suits do not look anything like what those guys were wearing when they walked across the field. So in telling my brother, constantly, look, when I'm there, I feel like we're being watched. When I'm out in the woods, he says to me, I've never told anybody, but since I know you believe and I know you've had experiences, he goes, I'm going to be honest with you. One day I woke up early, sun was already up, it was bright, clear skies. He took the dog out to use the bathroom. And as he's standing in the driveway, he's looking at the field across from us. Now, the cabin, the driveway is off just a dirt road. And on the other side of the road is somebody else's field. And my brother said, as he's standing there and the dog's, sniffing around, doing his thing, he sees this massive figure walking across the field. And he said to himself, that has got to be the biggest bear I have ever seen. And as he says this to himself, this figure stands up on 2 legs and proceeds to walk across the rest of the field. And my brother said he stood there. First, he was like, thankfully, the dog didn't notice it because the dog would have run after it. He said he stood there he doesn't even know how long he stood there. He just couldn't get over the size. He said to say it was massive is an understatement. He said, and it just clearly walked on two legs, arms swaying, just walked like it was the only one that existed in the world. Didn't have a care. He goes, I could see him clearly. He had to know I was there. He had to smell the dog, but completely unbothered. He goes, and he just couldn't, when he first saw it on all fours, he was like, that is the biggest bear I have ever seen. And then it stood up. And he said, to this day, and this was only about 4 years ago, he said, to this day, there's not a day that goes by that he doesn't think of the size of that being that just stood up on two legs and just walked. He said he couldn't believe what he was looking at, but at the same time, he knew what he was looking at, but he couldn't believe it. He could not believe what he was looking at. He's like, that's not supposed to exist. It's just not supposed to. And there it is, clear as day, standing up and walking. And that's it. Just as a matter of fact, and we still have this property to this day. We still have experiences. My niece just went turkey hunting with her father. And the funny thing is, they were telling us about, he thought they had trespassers. They didn't see anything, but he said he could hear commotion in the distance. And we have quite a few acreage, so there really shouldn't be anybody anywhere in sight. And he said he could hear somebody walking in the distance. He couldn't see anybody. He can hear them, but he just had an overwhelming feeling that he shouldn't be there. And being that he had his daughter with him, he got up and he left. But he never said, oh, I think it's Sasquatch. My brother and I looked at each other and were like, yeah. He just thought it was somebody else. But when he was telling us the story, he was just telling us because, he's like, hey, guys, when you're up there, be careful. I think we have some trespassers. And then we started asking questions, and my brother and I were looking at each other like, yeah, there's no trespassers. So, I mean, that's really it.
Okay. I appreciate you for sharing that with me.
And I'll be honest with you, there's not a day that goes by that I haven't thought of those experiences.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when I was younger and the first few experiences I had, I never thought of Sasquatch, even though I believed in it, because I've had paranormal experiences my whole life from a child to today. So I know that there's things out there that people say that they can't explain, or I've had people tell me that ghosts aren't real, and I've seen them plain as day with my own eyes. So I can't discount what somebody else says that they've seen. And then I find it insulting for people to say to hunters, to people that have lived their whole lives in the woods and in the country, that they didn't know what they saw. It was a mistaken idea. I just find that so insulting. And with the amount of people that have come forward, think of all the people that haven't come forward. So to say that something doesn't exist, I just think is absurd. But when I was younger, it wasn't until later on in life that I started to realize what I experienced was that it had to be something that clearly walking across the field, that the first thing I noticed was I don't even see my family when they're down there that clear. They look like little ants down in the field. These guys were clear. You could see a head, you could see arms, you could see legs, feet. But my stepfather's sister said, oh, those are guys in ghillie suits. So, but it's just, I never associated it with Sasquatch before until I got older and I started piecing everything together. And then I started to hear that they were on the East Coast. I always thought it was something that existed in, the Pacific Northwest, in Canada, in that region. I never expected to see it here.
The cabin, that sounds like an excellent place to experience strange activity. And you mentioned that there's a stream that runs behind the cabin, and they say these things.
Right in front of it.
Right in front of it? Okay. Is it like a spring-fed creek?
When it comes out of the mountain and it runs right across the property, and they built the cabin on the other side of it. Like you come down the driveway, and the stream runs across the driveway. Like that's where the driveway ends, where it runs across, and then you just step over it. They built a little bridge. You step over the bridge, and then there's the cabin, and then the rest of the property.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
One other experience my brother had. I want to say about a year or two ago, he was up there for the weekend, and he had the generator on. They were watching a movie. He was up there with his wife. They were watching a movie, and it was a clear, beautiful night. It was warm. There wasn't a breeze in the air. And you know when you can hear a generator being shut off? Well, they were laying there watching a movie, and all of a sudden, you can actually hear the generator being shut off. And my brother looked at his wife, and he goes, well, good night. And she goes, you're not going to go outside? And he goes, nope. Did you hear that? Somebody shut that off. I'm not going out there. I'm going to bed. He said it was literally shut off. And in the morning when he went out there, it was turned off. It wasn't unplugged. It was turned off. He said it was too late, too dark, and as many guns as he has up there, he didn't think any of them were big enough for what he thought could be out there, turning off a generator. There wasn't people outside. There weren't any cars that pulled into the driveway. You didn't hear anything except the generator being turned off.
Yeah, that is creepy.
That to me was wild.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to say if a physical creature turned it off or like if the paranormal whatever is there like suck the energy out of it, because they say that the paranormal needs energy to like manifest, and I've had like similar experiences. And that's kind of what I thought about the stream. Like the stream could be a water source for these cryptid creatures, but at the same time it's like, I don't know, a theory of mine that water can create like some type of vortex or open up a portal, or it contains energy with the current.
I agree with you.
Yeah. The energy from the current could cause these things to happen.
Absolutely. And I've had some wild paranormal experiences throughout my entire life. I mean, I've been at home in bed, and I see my door slightly open, and I can see two little hands and a little head peek out from the side and then duck back, and there's nobody there. I'm home alone.
Okay. Before I start asking questions, let's get into these paranormal experiences. What did you experience at your home or other areas that you've lived in? Can you tell me about them?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, when I was younger, the one house that we lived in, literally, I don't think I had one decent night's sleep the whole 3 years we lived in this house. And the funny thing is, my brother was 4 at the time. He would stand in the kitchen window and cry that there was a little boy in the house behind us that needed help. And he was so adamant about it that my stepfather went around the block to ask him, is there a little boy that lives in his house? And the ironic thing was, there was a family that lived in the house, and they had a little boy that died. He was ill of some sort. I think he had some sort of childhood cancer, but there was a little boy that lived in that house that died. So from that house, we moved, and from the living room, I'm standing in the bathroom, and from the living room, I can clearly see someone in a dark suit with sort of a little top hat, walk clearly from my living room into the bedroom. One night in the same house, I was laying down in bed. And when you're falling asleep and you kind of like adjust yourself and you roll over a little bit and you just slightly open your eyes? Well, as I am rolling over and I slightly open my eyes, I can clearly see a shadow figure laying in the bed with me. It startled me so much that I don't even think I touched the floor. I jumped up on the bed, and I was on the chair in the corner of the room. Lights were on, and I don't even remember touching the floor. And I remember saying out loud, I know you're here. I've seen you here. I can hear you in the hallway walking, but now you're pushing it. You've crossed the line. I haven't tried to get rid of you, but if I see you again, it's on. I never saw anything after that. But I can hear somebody walking in the hallway outside my door. And the other tenants, there were 3 apartments. And the funny thing is, this apartment it was above an antique shop. And that was a thing that used to creep me out. And the other tenants would open up the doors thinking somebody was pacing in the hallway. Everybody's dog would sit at the bottom of the door and growl. That was wild. And then the next house I lived in, I said I was in bed. My dog's head just shot right up. And I can clearly see the door and it was halfway open. And I could see it slightly move, and I see 2 little hands come around the door and a little head peek over and then go right back behind the door. I've had my dog wake up in the middle of the night howling in the middle of the room, staring at a wall, and there's nothing there that I can see. The couch would shake, my bed would shake. My neighbor across the hall, his girlfriend one night, she was asleep. Right before they went to bed, she said someone pushed her. She said if Al wasn't in front of her, she would have thought he pushed her. She could clearly feel hands on her back pushing her. That night, she woke up with somebody's hands around her neck. She never came back. She never, ever came back. Then the next experience I've had, the home I live in now, I was in the basement, and I can clearly feel someone like brush my hair off, like away from my shoulder. Not too long ago, and it actually took me a couple of months to walk back down this street. I was walking my dogs, and the 3 blocks in my area, I circle, and I change direction through each walk just to, not make it boring. And one night, I just got this overwhelming, nauseating feeling. My hair started to stand up. And this is a residential street. Street lights are on. And all of a sudden, I can see this black shadow figure on the floor. And at first, I thought it was a cat, maybe just in the shadow. But as I started to get close, my dog would not move forward. My dog stopped. Hair was starting to stand. And I thought I was gonna be sick. Like my whole stomach just dropped. And as I looked at this black shadow figure, it was not of a form of an animal that I can say I've ever seen to exist. I don't know what it was. I don't understand. You could see a head, you could see a body, but I don't understand what this figure was supposed to be. But all I know is that I had the most vile, sickening feeling I've ever had in my life. And it took me about 3 months before I would walk down that street again. Absolutely terrified me. I constantly feel something like walk by me. I'll see things out of the corner of my eye. Somebody just walk by. My whole life, it's wild. The office that I last worked in before I had cancer, I was working late one night, and my son came to the office, and we ordered a pie. And my son goes, "Mom, do you want to ask your coworker if he wants anything?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, my coworker?" He's, "Mom, there's somebody sitting in the conference room." And there was nobody there when I went to check, but I have seen somebody in the building before. So I just told myself, "Oh, no, he went down the back stairs." I didn't want to scare my son. He was only like 12 at the time. So it's crazy. I've had wild experiences. That's why when people say things, I don't just brush them off, or I listen to them, because I know I've had experiences that people looked at me like I'm crazy. So I can't be normal every other day of the week, but then when I see something, I'm crazy.
Yeah, no, I understand. And what do you think caused the paranormal activity to happen? Have you ever contacted spirits, a spirit guide, played with the Ouija board, anything like that?
Well, when I was younger, my cousins and we were camping with the family, and somebody had a Ouija board. And at the time, I don't know, I had to be about 11, 12. And I thought it was just a game. I'd never played with it before. I just thought it was a game. Well, the planchette was just flying all over the board. It was telling us to go deeper into the woods with certain pots of water. We had to start a fire. It didn't want me on the board. It kept spelling evil, and the planchette kept shooting at me. My younger cousins were freaking out. My other cousin and I had to pretend that we were doing it to scare them, but we weren't. We were terrified. And I have never looked at another board since then. And when people say, oh, that's just a toy, I go, oh, no, it's not. That is not a toy. But I had experiences before we played with the board. So I don't know if playing with the board just heightened it, or I don't know. But I did touch one once when I was younger. It was the worst thing I'd ever done. I have never looked at another board since. I have, when I was a kid, when I was younger, I had a girl sit on me in the pool, and my mom thinks that I may have drowned because when the lifeguards pulled me out, they had to do CPR. So my mom thinks I may have, I guess not really died in a way, but maybe crossed the veil. And then another time when I was younger, I wasn't that much younger. Yeah, I had cysts in my ovaries. I was about 14, and it ruptured, and I started to hemorrhage, and I fainted. So I don't know if maybe when I fainted, and the doctors, but I don't know. I don't know if those situations opened up doors. But I know that when the girl sat on me in the pool where she was drowning me, I was young. I was like 5.
Yeah.
And I remember experiences from back then. And my mom said when I was a kid, I had an imaginary friend that I was so adamant about. Adamant. Like I would leave food for him. She said it creeped her out. It actually creeped her out. So I don't know. But it's something I've had my entire life. I've experienced my entire life ever since. I mean, I can go back as far as 7, 8 years old when we lived in that house where that figure would stand in the doorway.
Yeah, and it sounds like
So
you've had
I'm not
experiences
really sure.
for a long time now, and it's hard to say exactly what caused it. I know people playing with Ouija boards can open up these doors, and even if you don't play with it, if you're there present, it could do that, or if you're watching something on TV where they're playing with it. But I think this possibly started whenever you had what you called your imaginary friend, and even people that are older have these imaginary friends, and they call them spirit guides, and it's just good not to listen to them, and they can open up doorways. So that's just something to keep in mind, and it's really hard to say exactly and pinpoint where this all started, but it could be a genetical thing where it's been happening in your family for a long time.
Well, it's weird, and for the longest time, I don't even know how long it's been, but there's not a day that goes by, and it could be the duration of a call, the time a call came in, the change in the store. I could be playing a game and accumulate certain coins, and I constantly see 444, 333, and 111. It's to the point where I'm in a car, and the miles driven was 33.3 miles. It's so, it's every day in the oddest forms. And I point it out now to people, and my husband's like, he can't get over it. How many times a day I point it out to him in such weird ways, that these numbers appear in situations that are completely out of my control. And I know those are angel numbers, So I kind of tend to agree with you in like spirit guides, and it's just it's just so odd. I've had so many odd experiences my entire life, and in so many different forms. It's just wild.
Yeah, that
Luckily,
is
I'm not somebody
interesting.
who cares what other people think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the encounters that you first described to me. Whenever you seen these red eyes, how big around were they?
Oh, they were huge. They had to be at least golf ball sizes, at least. And there was there's two sets of eyes. One was taller than the other, and they were tall. And that was another thing when my mom said, "Oh, there's probably a coyote." But coyotes are not that tall. A coyote and a deer do not stand. It was taller than I was because I remember looking up at the eyes. And at first I thought, is that a tree at the end of the driveway that they're in? But no, they were standing literally in the middle of the driveway at the end, like at the beginning of the driveway. Literally in the middle of it. So it wasn't like an owl or something in the trees. No, they were standing, and they weren't close together either. But they were huge. Like they were so distinct that I knew that they were eyes. Like they couldn't have been anything else. It was that distinct. They were at least golf ball sizes, at least.
Yeah, that is
And
interesting. And
you can see a shadow, but it was darker than the night. I couldn't make out a clear form, but you can see distinct two different shades of black. And what I was looking at with the red eyes was darker than the night.
and were the
And
eyes
that's what
self-illuminated?
scared. Yes, there was nothing shining on them because my mother and we were using the moonlight when we were at the Blue Drum. We didn't have a flashlight with us. It was in the middle of the night. It had to be at least midnight because we only had gotten there about 9:30, 10. We had gotten there late. So we were there a couple of hours before I went to bed, and that's why I was outside brushing my teeth, and I was out there with my mom. And we were using the moonlight. So there was nothing shining on them. There wasn't a light on the outside of the cabin. There wasn't anything. So it was literally the eyes itself reflecting red and bright. They were shiny. It was at first it was mesmerizing because I remember catching the red shine, and it took me a second to realize that there was a shadow around the eyes. Because at first I didn't even realize they were eyes. I was like, what is that? And then you could just see the darkness around them. And then the night on the side of that darkness. It was just, I couldn't understand I don't know if my mom just brushed it off because she didn't know what it was and it scared her. So she didn't want to scare me. I don't know. But it bothered me how she just brushed it off because I knew that it was something. And I went inside and I told my stepfather, but by the time we went back outside, there was nothing there. But that night, I remember feeling like somebody was outside staring at us through the window. I didn't see anything, but you can feel it.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And what do you think it was? Do you think it was Bigfoot?
Later on, after never forgetting that incident, and then later on, understanding that, Sasquatch is in New York, it is in the Catskills. Absolutely. It had to be because what else is that large with red eyes? And the black, the shadow of it was just, and there were two figures standing side by side because the eyes were two different heights, both around the same size eyes. It was just one was a little taller than the other, not much taller. And they were both taller than I was because I looked up at both sets of eyes. It's something that I never, and like I said, in the beginning, I thought it was, what was in my house. I thought it followed. But when I'm standing there, then it says to myself, no, because this is something that I'm feeling something different than what I feel at home. And at home, I've never seen anything. I could just feel it. But here I'm looking at it. But again, I didn't know what it was until later on, connecting the dots, knowing that Sasquatch is in that area. Then later on, what else could it be? And then not only that, the time where those two figures walked across the field. I never forget. That's something I've thought about every day since then, because they were massive. The moment I saw them, I said to myself, something's not right, because when my family is down in that field, nobody looks that big. Not my stepfather, and he's not a little guy. You can't even see him that much. They were massive, massive. But you couldn't make out any clothes. You just saw, it was just darkness. And then when my stepfather's sister said, oh, they have ghillie suits on, I said, oh, okay. But they were just massive. And the way and how fast they crossed the field, that was something else that stood out to me. And I know my stepfather's sister, I know she knew something wasn't right, because she went and got the shotgun. If they were just two people walking across the field, she would have just let them go. She wouldn't have thought twice about it. But she went and got the shotgun. I remember that. I pointed out to her, I said, Diane, who is that? Do you see them down there? Who is that? And I remember her going, wow. And then, oh no, they were, but you could see her face was disturbed. But she's the adult. I was a kid. She was trying to be calm but she went and got the shotgun. If they were just two guys walking across, paying no attention, she would have let them go. But I saw she was disturbed enough to get the shotgun. And like I said, the moment I saw them crossing the field, their size stood out to me, because that's in that field is where we target practice, with the bow, with the, the BB, everything. And I've watched my family in that field, and nobody, two of them together couldn't have been as big as what I saw across that field. And as fast as they made it across the field, because it's not a little field. It's not a little field by any means. And they made it across fast, and they were massive. But I couldn't make out any detail. I just saw just blackness. Like they had on I believed it. I believed what she said. It was a ghillie suit, because it looked like that. It was just like flowing and like just. And I remember one year, one of my brothers dressed in his ghillie suit to be like a bush, like to scare the kids outside. And I remember when he came outside, I remember saying, that day came flooding back to me, because I said, that's not what they looked like. That's not how they appeared. The way my brother's ghillie suit is flowing in the wind, it didn't look the same. And the moment I saw him in that day came rushing right back. And I know for a fact that that it was not a ghillie suit it couldn't have been. They were too big. It has stayed with me my entire life. Even after I pieced together that it had to be Sasquatch, there's nothing else that it could have been. I still think about those days. They still play in my head, the size and how fast they made it across the field. To this day, I still think about it.
Yeah, it sounds like Sasquatch to me. And the red eyes that you seen, how high off the ground were they?
Oh, well, at that time, I had to be at least 5'4", because I've always been tall, even as a young kid. And I remember looking up. So they had to be at least 7 or 8 feet in the air, at least, because I looked up when I saw them. So I know they were taller than I was, and I looked up a considerable height. I could still tilt my head back and still feel how far back my head was tilted looking up at them, up at the eyes. And that's why I laughed when my mom said, "Oh, they're probably just coyote or deer." No, even if they stood on their back legs, they're not going to be that high. And they're not going to stand there that still for that long. Because I think they were there before we even came outside, because I noticed the moment I started to put the toothpaste on my toothbrush, I was just looking straight ahead, and I saw the like at the top of my eyes, like at the top of my sight, I saw like just something bright. It's dark out. What do I see? And when I just looked further down where I was looking at the moment, that's when I could see the two sets, and I was like, whoa. And I remember looking up. So they had to be at least 7 or 8 feet tall. And my brother said the one that he saw walk across the field easily was 9 feet tall. He said easily. He said when it stood up, it had to be an easy 8, 9 feet.
Was the property at the end of the road?
At the end of our driveway, you have the road the road, and on the other side of the road is the other piece of property. So you can see it from our driveway because it's just a single road that goes up the hill. That our property is off to the left and the other property is on the right. But it's just one single lane road. It's just a dirt road that goes up. So it wasn't even far. It was literally like standing maybe if you stand on the corner and go across the street, halfway up the block, that's how far he was from it. Like half a block away. Because it was in the middle of the other guy's field across from us. Because the entrance to that guy's field, the entrance to his property is up a little further. The field across from our driveway is just part of his property. To enter his driveway, you still have to go up a little bit more.
Yeah.
So his was it's just an open field where my brother saw it walking down from.
What did your brother say the creature looked like?
He said it was dark, he said the sun was already up, the skies were light, everything was clear. He said it was either the darkest brown or just black. Like it was just so dark. It was like a dark brown or a black. He said that's all you can see. You can see, he saw the head, he saw the whole body, the whole outline, he saw the hands. He said it had hands. He could see the feet when it walked. He said, but it was at least 8 or 9 feet tall. It was black from head to toe, and it had hands and it had feet, and it first was on all fours, and he thought it was a bear. And then as he's saying that to himself, it stood right up. It just stopped walking and stood right up. That he said when it stopped walking, he thought it scented his dog. He thought it picked up his dog. But then it just stood up. And he just said he just stood there with his jaw just dropped. He couldn't believe what he was looking at. He was like, that's not supposed to exist. They make fun of people who say that they've seen that. Like that he goes, I know what I was looking at, but I couldn't believe what I was looking at. But he said he saw it clear as day. He just didn't see the face clearly because it was like walking almost like at a profile. Like it was coming down. It was coming down the hill. And it just stood up. It never turned its head to look at him. So he saw like the profile of the face. But he said the head was just round. There wasn't a point. It was just round. And the shoulders, he said it was just massive. Just absolutely massive. But black from head to toe. He saw the hands. He saw the feet. He saw the hands when it walked, how it swayed. He said it was incredible.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying. Is this the same field that you saw the two figures running?
No, this is on the opposite side. The field that I saw the two figures walking, that's on the other side of our cabin. So when you're standing in the kitchen and you look out the window, it's the opposite side of the cabin from where the driveway is. So The field that I saw it in is behind our cabin, and the field that my brother saw is across from our driveway.
Yeah, that is interesting. So it's pretty close to the area where you had your encounters, correct?
Oh, all on the same. Like, I mean, if there wasn't a property line, it would have been all the same property. Like, if the street didn't go through, the dirt road didn't go up the hill, it would all be one big piece of property. It was.
Yeah.
Because as you go up the hill, as you go up the mountain, we're on the left and the other guy's on the right. And there's not another neighbor until you get, I want to say maybe 2-3 miles up the hill. So there's not a lot of, there really isn't a lot of people. You know, our cabin, we don't, you know, nobody lives there full time, but we're there throughout the entire year. You know, we're there. Somebody's there, my brothers, my sister, her husband, me. Somebody's there at least twice a month. You know, just, you know, check on the property, cut the grass, you know, just to enjoy the property. You know, everybody hunts, you know, so we're there all throughout the year. And the other two families that live on that road, the one guy across where my brother saw it in his field, that guy's got to be in his 80s by now. And the family that lives up, they're an elderly couple as well. Like, they're a family that has lived there for years, you know, like probably their whole life. It's just our property. We just use it all year round. We just don't live there. So it's not highly populated to where people would be walking around, where you would see people that often.
Yeah. Sounds like a creepy area. And judging from the history of the property, there is certainly something there, and it's hard to say exactly what it is. I mean, to me, it sounds like Bigfoot and the paranormal. What do you think they are, and where do you think they came from?
You know, you hear stories about people seeing them cloak. You know, I kind of feel like they're like people. You know how some people have psychic abilities. You know, some people are empaths, and I think I think they're flesh and blood. Absolutely, I think they're flesh and blood. But there's a part of me that feels some of them have abilities that others don't, just like people. And I think that's why they just vary in appearance according to where they are, or just their DNA makeup and, you know, how they were created over, you know, what creatures created them. Just like people, you know, we have different skin tones, different hair, different height. I absolutely think they're flesh and blood. I just think that some have abilities that others don't.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm hoping in the future we get a solid answer on what's going on. And I feel like something big's about to happen. And I think everyone has that same gut feeling. And I think soon the truth will be revealed, or at least the acknowledgement that it is truly happening.
I will say this. Sometimes, you know, when you hear stories about people see an alien craft and then shortly after they'll see a Sasquatch figure somewhere in the same vicinity, sometimes I feel like, and this is probably going to sound crazy, but sometimes I feel like the Sasquatch that are seen in the vicinity of an alien aircraft, sometimes I wonder if it's not really aliens disguising themselves as a Bigfoot, because who's going to mess with a Sasquatch? You know, it's like people see an alien in the woods, they're going to, you know, it's different than if they see a Sasquatch. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they may not be, or even just from other creatures, they may not be in danger as if they appear as something so big and so massive and threatening to anything else. Seems like nothing is bigger than a Sasquatch. I don't know what can really take them down that easy. You know, so sometimes I think that when they see an alien aircraft and you see one in the vicinity, sometimes I wonder if it's the aliens not disguising themselves as Bigfoot. But
Yeah.
it may sound odd.
Yeah, very well could be. People say that if you see an alien, they'll make you think that you're seeing an owl or a deer, and who's to say that they couldn't make you see Sasquatch? And
it just, you know, it's just odd. You know, I mean, if you want to, you know, move through an area and you don't want to be messed with, you want to be the intimidating one. What would you make yourself appear as? I can't think of anything more intimidating and bigger than Sasquatch.
Yeah.
So that's my feeling on sometimes when people say they see him, in the vicinity of an alien craft. I mean, I could be wrong. They could be completely two different entities, but that's, my thinking if I stop and I think about it. But I do. I think they're absolutely flesh and blood. Some have abilities that others don't.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it could be possible. It's hard to say. And yeah, I think that pretty well covers your encounters and your experiences, and it gives me a pretty good idea of what you got going on. And yeah, Dina, I really appreciate your time today. You did an excellent job at describing these experiences, and I believe you 100%. And I can tell that something profound happened to you, and I feel like more is going to happen in the future. So just beware, keep your head on a swivel, and take care of yourself.
Ashley, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. I hope it was interesting enough, but I really appreciate you giving me the time to let me share what I've experienced. I really do. I greatly appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, Dina. You did an excellent job, so thank you so much, and it makes me so happy to hear your encounter, and it makes me feel not so alone.
Well, absolutely. Thank you, and thank you for all you do and giving everybody a place to share without being judged.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a comforting feeling to know that people can say they understand what you've experienced, or they don't think you're crazy. So I really do. I appreciate everything you do and the platform you give everyone, and I thank you for giving me this little bit of time to share with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Dina. And you have yourself an excellent day, and you take care of yourself, okay?
Likewise, Miguel. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. All right, Dina, thank you very much for sharing your Bigfoot encounters and experiences with me. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like to see these creatures standing in a field. It almost makes you wonder if they were hunting deer or what they were up to. What do you think these Sasquatch creatures were up to, and why would they just walk out into an open field? These things do defy logic and understanding in every way. A lot of people think they are from Genesis 6 and part of a creation due to the Nephilim living in those days on planet Earth, but it very well could be possible. I mean, maybe this entire alien phenomenon, cryptid phenomenon, has to do with Genesis 6, and I can't dismiss it. I mean, anytime I try to think level-headed and believe that this is just a physical creature or aliens are just some advanced species living on planet Earth, I don't know. I always seem to go back to Genesis 6. It's really the only thing that makes sense, especially since we are not given an explanation as to what is possibly going on. And yeah, I do ask my guests if they've ever experienced paranormal activity, because it does make me wonder about other dimensions, other realms, and the dark side. I do believe there is a battle between good and evil, and we see that every day in our lives. So I think it could be connected to people tampering with evil, but it's really hard to say. But yeah, I appreciate everyone for tuning in today and taking the time to listen to the podcast. And until the next one, be safe out in the forest.